Hi, this is Joe Gilmore. It's Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be talking about symbolism within this album cover here, which is very loaded, as you can see. And this was released in the late 60s by the Grateful Dead, and it was called AOXOMOXOA. Now, I'm not a Grateful Dead fan. I don't hate the Grateful Dead. I don't have a problem with them, but I just never got into their music. But I've always been very captivated by their imagery and the whole psychedelic movement, especially considering the CIA's involvement and the MK Ultra project and the dosing of random people, unbeknownst to them, by the CIA, which is something I've touched on in other blogs and something you can look into, and you will find that this is admitted on the CIA's own website. They've got declassified documents you can look up, and you can see that this is not a conspiracy theory. It really happened. CIA really did dose people with acid to see what the applications were militarily. Psychological operations, psyops, psychological warfare. And, there's a lot of CIA activity that we can detect behind the introduction of LSD into our culture, and even behind the entire hippie movement. And if you've watched some of my previous blogs, this is something I've talked about. So we are going to be building off of that here. This isn't totally random. So let's just jump right in here. So first of all, what the hell is AOXOMOXOA? What the hell does that mean? Well, if we go on Wikipedia, first of all, the title of the album is a palindrome created by an artist, Rick Griffin. Now, I didn't know what a palindrome was until I looked into this, but it's a word, number, phrase, or other sequence of characters which reads the same backwards as forwards, such as madam or race car. There are also numeric palindromes, including date timestamps using short digits, 11, 11, 11, 11. Kind of interesting choice of number there. And long digits. Anyhow, who cares, right? Well, this makes me think of, and hang with me here because this is going to be it's going to sound like a big digression, but it's going to come full circle, I promise. If you remember that song by Faith No More called Epic, which it came out in the 90s, I always thought it was kind of a silly song. But it's very catchy. And what is it about? What is the song about? Well, it's about it, right? Because look, they're talking about something here. Can you feel it, see it, hear it today? If you can't, then it doesn't matter anyway. You will never understand it because it happens too fast and it feels so good. It's like walking the glass. Every line here is it's canceling it out. Every time Mike Patton starts talking about something, he cancels it out. He's like, you can't see it. You can't have it no matter what you do. And he reveals the whole meaning in the chorus. And it's very brilliant. I mean, honestly, the first time I heard this song, I just thought it was a stupid song, but it's really quite brilliant. And in the chorus, he finally asks the question, what is it? Okay. Well, the answer is, it's it. And if you don't get it, he says it again. What is it? It's it. So that's it. The whole song is about it. All right? It's about it. What is it? It's nothing. It's just it. It's nothing more than that. You're not supposed to think about it. It's messing with you because it's making you think there's more to it than just it. But there isn't any more to it. It's it. Okay? So I'm trying to prepare you for what I'm going to say about the album title meaning for this Grateful Dead album, because it's it. So now I'm going to be honest, okay? I didn't look that much into this. I did spend some time looking into it, and I saw what people were saying about this album cover title, but I don't think anyone's really cracked the code, quote unquote. And I'm not saying I've cracked the code either, but Occam's razor states that the simplest definition is usually the correct one. Okay, so I just did some very simple exercises, if you will, to try and figure out what the hell this means. Okay, so AOXOMOXOA. So first of all, if you notice, it's the same as it forwards as it is backwards, right? So we already covered that. And you see AOXO is reflected over here. OXOA. It's backwards, right? So it's kind of like a reflection. And in the middle, we have the letter M. So that's kind of interesting. If you just think of it visually, don't try and think about the meaning or what the letters mean or anything. Just think of it visually. Well, we have a reflection. OOXXOOAA, right? So it's kind of neat, just visually. But I thought to myself, what are the number allocations to these letters? And I think that's what revealed the secret to me. If it's even a secret, I don't know. So letter A is 1, letter O is 15. And when I say this, I mean, A is the first letter of the alphabet. O is the 15th letter of the alphabet. X is the 24th letter of the alphabet, and so on, right? So if you simply add these up, they add up to 1, 2, 3. Okay? So, if you watched my previous video where I talked about Soundgarden and how they messed around with words and, anagrams and things like this, the whole new dragons things, and how they sort of mess with they sort of invite you to look, they put things out there to taunt you. They put these weird words like bad motor finger and super unknown. And, they're not throwing it out there because it makes sense. Super unknown is not a word. Ultra mega okay is not a word. So why are they throwing it out there? Are they throwing it out there to mess with you? I mean, why not? Why don't we take the bait? Let's play the record backwards. What does it say? Does it mean something? I don't know. But they tempt you. They even as they make fun of the rock and roll cliches, they're sort of tempting you at the same time, to go to that second level. So I think that's what it's an old tactic. And Grateful Dead was one of the best bands at it. Just look at their album covers. There's all kinds of Blue Oyster Cult's another one. They put the symbolism out there because they want you to chew on it. They want you to turn it over in your head, even as they make fun of you for coming to what are probably ridiculous conclusions, or that maybe they laugh at you when you completely get it, or maybe it means nothing. And in this case, I actually think it means nothing. 1, 2, 3. I mean, can you get any more ambiguous than 1, 2, 3? You're just counting. You're just going 1, 2, 3. There's no pattern at all other than just numbers counting. You might think in terms of, you're in a rock band, and you're just counting off 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you're filming a movie, 1, 2, 3. Psh. I truly believe that the whole purpose of the album title is to be actually completely meaningless. And the fact that everything adds up to 1, 2, 3 is that's the punchline. It's a joke. Okay? That's all it means. It really doesn't mean anything more than that. In fact, if you go into one of these anagram solvers in Google or whatever, I don't really recommend using Google anymore. I'm kind of sick of Google, frankly. But if you go into one of these anagram generators, you will find that there is no word you can make out of this. And that's the genius in it. You can't decode it because there's nothing there. The only word I found from this, there's really only 2 words. There's Om, which is like Om, the whole meditation thing, and Moo, M-O-O, as in a cow. So you don't even have XX. Well, you got XO as in like, a love letter to someone, but you're scraping the bottom of the barrel to find a meaning here. So I truly believe that the ultimate meaning here is that there is no meaning. It's a wild goose chase at the most profound level. So again, what is it? It's it. Just like the song by Faith No More. I recently found out that Courtney Love from the band Hole, the one who was married to Kurt Cobain when Kurt Cobain died, is supposedly on the back of this album. This picture here is when you flip the album over, this is what you see on the back of it. And supposedly this little girl here is Courtney Love. Now this is disputed. Here she is as a child, so you can see that she definitely resembles this little girl here. If we go in a little further, that's very plausible. And in fact, her father, Hank Harrison, was managing the Dead in the very beginning when they were called the Warlocks. So it's very plausible that this could be her. She would have been the right age. And here she is holding the album cover up and going, hey, look, it's me, and being all proud of it, There is an awful lot of consensus that this is actually a girl named Stacy Kreutzmann, who is the daughter of the drummer of Grateful Dead, Bill Kreutzmann. So I don't know what's true and what isn't, but there's almost just as much information out there claiming that it's Courtney as there is that it's Bill's daughter. I tend to think it's the daughter of the drummer of the band, but it's highly plausible that it could be Courtney Love, given her father's early involvement with the band, the fact that they lived in San Francisco, and blah, blah, blah. But it's just something interesting to throw out there. You can make up your own mind about it. So getting back to this album title and the symbolism, if you look at this font, it's quite detailed and almost hard to read, but just kind of brilliant and just beautiful in its intricacy. But what I found out was this is actually what's called an ambigram. Okay? Ambigram. What is an ambigram? It can also be read as something else. We ate the acid. So there's a hidden message in the title itself. So I mean, again, getting back to this whole thing about, Ken Kesey and the acid tests and the CIA and dosing people with acid at the shows just to see what happens for, psychological operations applications. You see here, we've got WEATE, THE, acid. So, I spoke a little bit about right side of the brain thinking versus left side of the brain thinking. And this is something that is key to understanding propaganda and how our society has been molded and how our minds are molded, because it sort of bypasses the rational mind, a lot of this stuff. If you go out and you start talking to your friends and saying, hey, how about those hidden messages in that last Star Trek film we saw, How about that scene where Spock, who's a Vulcan, the Vulcan was the Roman god of fire, right? And volcanoes. And then Spock jumped in that volcano. How about that? Your friend's going to look at you like you're nuts. Like, what the hell are you talking about? But the thing is, they're doing this, okay? They're putting these hidden messages in your face, and it's bypassing your left hemisphere of your brain, which is all about logic and reason and things that make sense and a linear time. And it's going straight to your right brain, which is about stuff that's abstract, some stuff you don't necessarily acknowledge on the surface, but you sort of take it in. It's kind of like you press record you press the record button and your brain's recording stuff on your right side of your brain, but your left side of your brain isn't necessarily paying attention all the time. Your left side of your brain says, well, I feel like thinking about that right now, and I'm just going to ignore that. So again, this is going to the right side of your brain. So it's sort of encouraging acid use, right there in the title. And it's doing it in a very right brain sort of manner, in a way that your left brain's not really going to necessarily acknowledge. So the album title is kind of laughing at you. It's kind of nonsense. It's kind of sort of tempting you to decode it. And then when you do, it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4. Haha, you're a fool. There's nothing here. You're just counting. But, and then we've got the whole, we ate the acid thing. Okay, well, we get it. Acid, yay, we're hippies, we're high. So let's go another level deeper. What's this penis thing all about, okay, and this laughing skull? Well, obviously we're talking about the generative force here. And this came up a lot when we were talking about the symbolism in the film Tommy. And I'm sure plenty of people who watched that video, if plenty of people even bother to watch the whole thing, the big revelation was that the pinball and the orb and all of that symbolism in that film represented the generative force. And, here's a picture from one scene where his mother is watching the film and she gets all stimulated and starts and launches into this whole sexual grotesque scene. But it all starts from her viewing her son Tommy being crowned the pinball wizard. And I'm telling you, it's not just about a pinball. It's not just about a band. It's not just about music. We're talking about the generative force here. And this may very well be the same thing that Star Wars is talking about, because especially if you look at the last 3 Star Wars films, which I go way into in my written blog at batshitcave.blogspot.com, references to the generative force, okay? That's what the ball represents, the generative force, and this is very Masonic. So this penis is ejaculating, and here's the testicles, yay, it's all fun. And the trees are growing, and it's the same force that's making everything grow in the world. We're talking about, this is very big, okay? The guy who made this piece of art, he's into the same occult studies as Ken Russell, the guy who made who directed the film for The Who, Tommy. It's all about the generative force. And the thing is, when you're talking about sex and copulation, and it can manifest itself in many thousands of different ways. But if you just strip it down to the raw essence, you're just talking about the very basic thing of the generative force in nature, which drives everything, right? I mean, if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, well, you believe in sex, don't you? Because you want to get laid, right? You want to make babies. I mean, we've all got the urge, the animal urge to copulate, okay? So, and you go back to ancient Egypt, and there was all these phallic symbols and the sun and the earth and all of this. So anyhow, we see the semen is fertilizing the egg. And then we've got this orb here, okay? There's an orb, all right? There's an orb there, there's an orb there. It's the sun, it's the source, okay? It's where everything's coming from, and it's winged. So in the sense of the ancient Egypt, we're talking about the winged disc. And if we go back to the Aeon card from the Thoth Tarot deck, this is Crowley's deck that he made. This card is the updated version of the Judgment card from the Rider-Waite deck, which most people are a lot more familiar with than the Thoth deck. But if you see here, you can see these wings, and here's the disc in here. This is very applicable, okay? Crowley is talking about the generative force, and you can almost see an ankh here, and you see serpents around the head of Horus. This is the baby Horus. This god here, this is Hadit, but this god Hadit mates with Nuit, which is an ancient Egyptian goddess representing the night sky and the universe. And they come together and they form the child Horus. All right, so this winged orb, this is deeply occult, this is deeply esoteric stuff. And look, you see the serpents here. So there's a correspondence. So the point is, a lot of these bands and a lot of the entertainment you're seeing, they're all referencing a lot of the same symbolism. The relevance of the symbolism to basic laws of consciousness and nature and the world are evident in their endlessly fertile manifestations in whether it be artwork or music or lyrics or any of it. So what I'm trying to say is there is a great wisdom that is behind all of this. But the individuals that are imparting that wisdom, you know, they may not necessarily be benevolent. I mean, we've got this whole idea of death and the Grateful Dead. I mean, how can you be grateful if you're dead? You know, isn't that sort of glorifying the idea of death? So, speaking of the generative force in nature, I'm sure most of you recognize this symbol here. It's the symbol for Freemasonry. It's the square and compass. And if you've been watching my videos or you've read some of my blogs at batshitcave.blogspot.com, particularly the blogs I've done about the last 3 Star Wars films, you know that I point out very clear examples of the square and compass embedded within promotional posters for the last 3 Star Wars films. So, what does this mean? Why is there so much Freemasonic symbolism in these Disney-produced films? Because the people producing the films are Freemasons, and they love their symbolism, and they're feeding you messages covertly through the right side of your brain. And so, what does this G mean exactly? Most people assume that it means God, which it probably does, because I believe, now I'm not a Freemason. I'm speaking as someone who has studied Freemasonry from the outside. I am not an initiate. But I know that generally speaking, they require you to believe in God in some form, not necessarily Christianity, but you have to believe in God to be a Freemason, some type of God. Some people think it means geometry, which makes a lot of sense because look, that's a compass, that's a square. These are measuring tools. When you're building, you have to be familiar with mathematics to, so your structure is, sound, so it stands, so it doesn't fall down. You need to know your mathematics. But the meaning that goes by most people's attention is the idea of the generative force in nature, which we've been talking about. And Freemasons wear these aprons here. And look at this. Here's the square and compass. And what do we have here? Instead of a G, we have the sun. And what have we been talking about? What do I keep bringing up in, these posts, these blogs about, in the blog about Tommy, where I kept talking about the generative force, and you had Captain Walker holding the orb in his chest, and you had the sun at the very beginning of the film and the sun at the very end of the film. It's all the same thing. It's really that simple. And where does the apron go? It goes around your waist. And where does this sun find itself? It's right at your penis, okay? When you're wearing it. It's right at your penis. It's the generative force. I talked about the Fool tarot card in the Thoth tarot deck in a previous blog. And I talked about how there was a little sun right. If you look at the Thoth tarot deck and you look at the Fool, there's a little sun right at his crotch. It's because it's the generative force. It's ruling everything, okay? It's the power of nature, the generative force that all the pagans worshipped. It's the same thing, okay? Here's another apron. Look, you've got the G, the generative force, right where the penis is, okay? And you've got the eye up here, the eye of Horus, the eye of Providence, the all-seeing eye, the third eye, yada, yada. It's all the same. So again, just to revisit the symbolism in the film Tommy for a moment, you can see here, this is from the film itself, the Ken Russell directed film Tommy. And you've got the T for Tommy. You've got a cross, kind of like a Christian cross. And we talked about Captain Walker, who's played by Robert Powell, who was filming Jesus of Nazareth at the time that the film Tommy came out. So, he was playing Jesus. So this is the way Freemasons think. Every symbol has multiple meanings. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, sure. But when you're talking about Freemasons, they rarely use a symbol that doesn't have multiple meanings. So if you're not willing to jump on board with this idea that, no symbol means just what it means on the surface, you're never going to get the real point that I'm making here, or that the Freemasons are making, because they're all about double and triple and even quadruple meanings if they can fit it in there. Oh, this is a cross, it's an ankh, you've got the pinball. You know, how many different ways do they need to present the pinball to you before you get the idea that, wait a minute, I think this represents something else besides just a ball bouncing around inside a video game. Okay, it's the generative force. That's what it represents. If a picture says 1,000 words, this one says 1,000,000. Just take a look here. We've got Hank Harrison, the original manager for the Warlocks, who became the Grateful Dead, and then his daughter, Courtney Love, before the nose job, some sort of early photo from some early band she tried to make. And I did this video not because I'm a fan of Grateful Dead and not because I hate them, but because I feel like there's something here. Go look at the Courtney Love Wikipedia entry. Go watch the VH1 Behind the Music documentary about her. There's something going on here that we need to understand. We need to take this apart, and this is mind control, okay? And it's a tradition, and it's a society. It's a secret society that we need to understand if we want to get to the bottom of all of these deaths. People like Chris Cornell, people like Dimebag Darrell, people like Chester Bennington. When you're looking at Courtney Love, you're looking at someone who played the game in such a way that she remained useful to the powers that be. How many brushes with death did she have? She's a mind control slave. I mean, that's what she is. Look at her eyes here. Okay, this was years and years ago. Before she met Kurt Cobain, before she was famous. And Hank Harrison was there the whole time, sort of, kind of like this silent overseer of everything. There's a big story here, and we're going to get more into that in future blogs.